Hey, it's the Good Advice Show, and you're coming back to your best resource for entrepreneurship, business leadership, management. Wherever you are in your business, we have the good advice for you here today. And today's no different. There's no fluff in this podcast. We're going to give you the actionable, tangible, practical things that you need to be thinking about in order to actually grow your business. Today's guest is an amazing guest. It's Orrin Klopper. He's the CEO of Netsurit, a business that's been around for over 20 years, going all the way back to the good old Y2K days, which if you don't know what that is, then maybe you're a little bit of a younger listener on the podcast. We'll be talking all about scaling a business today, managing a team successfully, and is it possible to manage people and still manage people well and have a healthy culture and still make money in your business? All that and more on today's episode. But first, let's hear a word from one of our amazing sponsors on the podcast, one of our awesome advertisers coming to you right now. You know that feeling at 10 o'clock at night when you finished a long day of work and you're trying to figure out all the financials of your business? Well, the good news is you don't have to be an expert in this space. You got to just know who is the expert to call. That person is Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions, and he does business bookkeeping services better than anyone else I know. By not only helping you manage your books, he can also be the expert to help you understand your books. On top of that, he also handles payroll for businesses and really takes the worry and stress of managing all of these things so that you can focus on running your business well. So what are you waiting for? Stop wasting time trying to understand all these elements of your business. Call Steve Lay at Equity Business Solutions and he'll show you the value beyond the numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. Orrin, how's it going today?
Great. Excited to have this discussion with you. Thanks, Blake.
I don't know if this is obnoxious or not, but I love your accent.
Thank you.
Whereabouts are you from?
South Africa.
Okay, cool. Like I said, I don't know if that's obnoxious or not, but you know.
Not at all. Not at all. I take it as a compliment.
Yeah. Now, you started Netsurit 24 years ago. During the lead up to Y2K. Give us a little bit of an origin story. How did the business get put together?
Yeah, for sure. I was at university. I took an extra major in information systems. And this was actually in 95. And a friend of mine who was doing an engineering degree and another friend who was in the same, doing the same degree as me. The friend doing engineering had already started a business selling engineering calculators and computers to friends and family. Okay. And he invited me to come and sell for them. I'd just taken information systems, so I would get out there and sell. I wasn't the most technical person at the time, to say the least, but I loved sales. And in 97, I decided this is what I want to do. And we pretty much would do anything from selling computers to doing networking and then eventually in the kind of 98, 99 in the lead up to Y2K, it became very clear to us that this entrepreneurial engine of the economy, that SME, SMB space, was being taken advantage of. And they did not necessarily understand technology, but they were starting to embrace it. And they were just, there was no clear model where they had a predictable monthly charge that they could pay to have their IT looked after. And that's where Netsurit was born. It was almost an IT insurance offering. So that's where the name came from, where we would charge a fixed monthly fee and we would take care of them. And that's really how the business sort of went into the form that it is now. And essentially, we're still doing the exact same thing. We've reinvented ourselves and innovated, but same customer base, sort of 25 to 1,000 user environments. And we charge a monthly fee, and we try and take care of them in a trusted advisor capacity.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you guys are doing over $30 million in revenue. You talked about these other companies. It's during Y2K. Was it And this, unfortunately, I was a bit young. I think I was around a teenager around this time, so didn't really know much about what was going on other than the Y2K panicked. Was it, you mentioned you saw these other IT companies that really were kind of scamming, I'll say the word scamming, but like ripping people off. Was it people kind of jumping on the Y2K scare and like trying to pick up customers and sales, and like you guys saw an opportunity to actually do it the right way?
Yes, I think there were two dynamics. The bigger dynamic was that the early adopters of most of the technology were large enterprises. So very few organizations had built appropriate technology that fit the SMB entrepreneurial space. So organizations might say, well, look, you know what, I need a certain piece of technology, and they're selling them an enterprise class product. Mm-hmm. So, and even Microsoft, it took Microsoft. I remember I used to fight with them. They have these things called gold competencies, and they didn't have one for small business until I can't remember exactly when. I think it was 2003, and I would fight with them saying, but we focus on small business, So I think a lot of the large enterprises that were providing technology solutions to business had built those solutions around larger businesses. So that was one of the reasons. And then I think Y2K, some people were just exploiting it, really exploiting it. So those would be the two elements. And it was also just a sense of purpose as well. When you see this entrepreneurial part of the economy and the impact it can have and how those businesses can grow into serious economic force in any country, it just felt like we were doing something deeply meaningful.
Yeah, it actually kind of and I don't want to get too off base here, but it kind of reminds me of like crypto today, of how it's this exciting, like the whole technology is like very exciting, but there is like a multitude of bad actors and people realizing like opportunities to make money, rather than really digging into, the new technologies and really providing a meaningful service. But I don't know if that's a fair analogy or not.
I think it's a fair comparison when you look at the life cycle of blockchain and crypto, and that balance of regulation and speed and agility and innovation. Yeah. And sometimes where the speed, agility, and innovation wins and there isn't the regulation, that's where some of those scary things can happen. There's no question it's here to stay. And it can have a massive impact as it comes out of this absolute bloodbath that it's in right now. Right. But it's great technology, and hopefully it won't get over-regulated and die. Yeah. But I think it's a fair comparison.
Yeah. Now, not to back up too far, but you said something in your introduction that really piqued my interest. You mentioned how you loved sales. And one of the most common, and I know you're highly involved in just entrepreneurship in general. One thing that I hear often from entrepreneurs, and there's probably quite a few listening to this podcast who really dislike sales, heavily dislike having to get out there and sell to people. And it's not even just like the rejection side of it. I was talking to a guy the other day who was like, I just don't like it. I just don't like doing it. I think it's just interesting that you like sales. I'd love to hear more about, what was it that you liked about sales? What's your perspective on sales? Tell us more.
Yeah. So let me just weigh in on entrepreneurs that don't like sales. Yeah, so I think there are a couple of perspectives. One, you're in denial, because it's very hard to build a business if you can't convince people to join you and you can't convince customers to buy from you. And if you've somehow been able to establish and grow a business and you don't enjoy sales, best you have a partner that absolutely loves it. Yeah. And you look at a lot of the startup and the VC funding world, they look very favorably on businesses that are two people versus just one people, as two founders versus one founder. But no, I absolutely love sales. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other night, and we'd had an event. He's a friend of mine that I met through the school I went to, but also through Entrepreneurs Organization. And we were talking to his two kids, and we were sharing entrepreneurial sort of thoughts, and like to this day, nothing excites me as much as a lead. The only thing that's first, and then second is actually closing the deal. It's got to be one of the greatest feelings as any leader or entrepreneur in a business. And if you don't enjoy it, I think you really need to make sure someone standing right next to you absolutely loves it, because you get different types of salespeople. Like you get some salespeople that are technocrats, and in their mind, there is only one way to do the solution correctly. And you find sometimes those people are actually really good salespeople. So we have that type of salesperson in our technical pre-sales. They're not the most diplomatic people. I'm going to tell you straight, they will not call themselves a salesperson, but they are so straightforward and candid about what they believe is the right solution and what's good for your business that you end up buying from them. So you get many different styles and flavors of salespeople.
What's your advice for the young entrepreneur, not age young, like young in their business, who is afraid to sell because they don't want to not deliver on what they've promised? They don't want to let someone down. They don't want to piss someone off. They don't, whatever it is, but the people who are scared to sell, any encouragement for them?
For sure. You have to listen to a book. I think it's called Rejection Proof. I must just remember. It is absolutely brilliant. And the idea in it is every no means you're one step closer to a yes. So every time you get rejected, say your ratio is 1 in 10, every time you get rejected, you're one step closer to the yes. The book is by Jia Jiang, called Rejection Proof, and it's just amazing. And I believe most entrepreneurial stories of growth and crossing that chasm, they can tell you a myriad of stories about how they got rejected.
Oh yeah,
and it's that resilience and resolve. I mean, I remember I was at the end of my schooling. Before I went and lived in the UK for a year. I worked to make some extra money. Before I left, I did telesales at a business called the Auto Trader. So basically, you would phone people who were advertising their vehicle or car in the classifieds in the newspaper. And you must only phone people that are private sale, that are not through a dealer. So there was this big sign up on the wall that said, "Do not phone this number." We put the number up. So anyway, I was very successful in that role, but I did manage to phone that guy 3 times. He was a dealer and he was actually suing them. But there's something about breaking that fear. I remember in the early days of the business, I think there were 6 of us, and we all had a daily cold calling target. All of us.
Yeah.
And there's something about it. If you're doing it together, the camaraderie of it, it's actually exhilarating. It really, really is. So that book, Rejection Proof, I think is just a great one.
Yeah, we'll put that book, guys. We'll put the book in the description, the comments of this episode, so you don't lose track of it. But I love how you phrase that, like kind of breaking through the fear of selling, breaking through the fear of rejection. Because I do think even the people who are natural salespeople have that slight twinge of not hesitation, but anxiety, I think. And then there's some of us who've never sold at all before, who are listening to the show, who are like, I'm terrified of the idea of going to like a networking event or cold calling someone. I remember I cold called someone one time, and as I was pitching, like in the first few words, he interrupted me and he was like, "Why are you calling me?" And I was like, "Oh, I just thought, and he's like, "Why are you calling me? Don't call me." And I was like, "No, I'm sorry," But
and even when I was just kind of reading the notes, on your approach to this podcast, you said, just be authentic. Okay. And I can tell you now that I think there might sometimes be a misperception amongst entrepreneurs and business owners that a salesman is a certain type of person.
Yeah.
But if you some of that, Gallup have that Strength Finder tool set that they use, and there's a sales dynamic of that as well. And my opinion or perspective for those people that maybe feel uncomfortable selling is just be yourself.
Yeah.
Just be yourself in that engagement. Be as authentic as you can. Literally, say you hate sales. You literally open up saying, listen, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm an awful salesman. The fact that I've cold called you, you have no idea how uncomfortable this is. And you know what? If you want to slam the phone down, just do it. But if you'll give me 30 seconds, and it's like, even for me, like I generally hate cold calls. And I don't know if you get them, but sometimes that guy or that woman or man gets you. They're so good. They're so authentic. I'm listening, not because I want to buy, because I want to hire this person. I want to see how far they go. But, just like you said in your brief, just be authentic.
Yeah.
Just be yourself, be authentic.
It's amazing advice. And I think it's encouragement for all of our listeners who, many of us are on social media. Many of us are following different business leaders on social media. And, I would encourage our listeners not to fall into the trap of comparison on social media. You see that one salesperson on social media who you're like, oh my gosh, I want to be just like them. But at the end of the day, you're not them. You may be like them, but a lot of us aren't like them in the sense of like personality or style or what have you. And Orrin, I think you're giving great advice in terms of really owning yourself. Moving on from this, let's get back to your story. So you launched the business, Netsurit, and now 20 plus years later, a $30 million brand. Do you remember the moment where you realized like, okay, this is something? Like, this is not just like a side hustle or an entrepreneurial venture. Like, this thing has serious legs.
Yeah, good question. There was definitely a moment where, I did information systems and as one of my majors, and I had my partner Rian and my partner Brian at the time, and Rian had convinced one of the top engineering students who actually had a bursary for his degree, and part of that is that he had to work for them for a few years as part of the agreement. Anyway, he agreed to join us. Okay, and we were nothing at that time. Then in my information systems class, the student that came first, his name was Richie Ho. I remember him so clearly, such a legend. He joined us too. And then there were just suddenly people wanted, like, we were running the business out of my flat in Randburg at that point, which was like small, like it was a one bedroom flat with like a loft.
Yeah.
And there were, and next thing there were these guys that were just keen to join us. And so I kind of realized there's something going on there. And couldn't really, we moved from there into our first offices. But even at the time that we registered our domain, which was 1999, we registered netsurit.com. Mm-hmm. We always had these global aspirations that we really wanted to build a truly significant and great business. So kind of to that question, I think the first point there, but there've definitely been ups and downs where I've felt like, wow, this is so hard. And, like I saw Elon Musk being asked something like this, and he just said straight faced, never. I always know I just got to do what I got to do, so he's just got this crazy sense of confidence and self-belief. And I definitely believe in myself and I have confidence, but they've definitely over this journey, there've been times where it's been tough. And there's been a very strong imposter syndrome in me where I'm like, well, people can find out. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I love this. I love parking there for a second because nothing against Elon Musk, but I saw something similar. I saw another thing from Grant Cardone, who, for our listeners, very popular sales guy on social media. And I think sometimes I wonder if how much of this is like real confidence and how much of it is just like instilling confidence in the brand. Like I know exactly what I'm doing. But something you said, Orrin, that I think is so relatable and I think comforting for our listeners, especially when we talk about imposter syndrome, are these wild ups and downs in our business. Where like I can really relate to like times where I feel totally on fire. Like I'm like, man, this business is going to go so far. And then there's times where I'm like, what am I doing? Like literally, what am I doing? I'm telling my wife, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. What gets you through those low moments that you've been through in your business?
Yeah. There are some habits that definitely pull me out of that. The one is exercise. If I'm being consistent with my exercise, that definitely has an impact. Number two, I leverage. I do a gratitude exercise in the morning and at night every day. So that habit has also had an impact.
I've actually. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, carry on. Go for it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you though. I was just going to say this gratitude exercise. I've actually heard this mentioned a multitude of times. Not just in general, but from great guests like yourself who've come on the podcast to do something similar. And I just wanted to pause for a second, just because I've talked about this with a few entrepreneurs who, I guess, oversimplify it or underplay it, where they're like, oh, so I'm supposed to like sit around and say what I'm grateful for. And I'm like, I mean, kind of, yeah, but it's amazing how these small practices seem to have such a big impact on perspective and resilience and just commenting on your practice. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No problem. So, I mean, the one dynamic is me personally, but we've definitely infused it in our culture. So there's something about saying thank you within the culture that has definitely had a massive impact. So that's deeply embedded in our culture. And then, if I look at some of the terms, to be more specific, your last podcast was about a recession and what do you do? We went through the 2001 recession. We went through the 2008, 2009 recession. We went through the pandemic. So, here I am. This is my adult life's work.
Bring it on.
And I'm looking at this train coming directly, through the tunnel at me. And as intimidating and as overwhelming as that can be, in moments where you're like, what am I going to do? I've got no clue. We were just unbelievably decisive and moved very, very, very quickly. And who knows? We didn't know that they were going to be the right decisions, but we made the decision. We followed through. We were gentle and respectful on the people. We went out of our way to protect customer relationships, and we protected cash flow like crazy. So sometimes when it really looks bleak, just being decisive and taking action has definitely energized me and motivated me through some of those real dips.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I love, I do think what you said reminds me of something I was thinking of earlier about being decisive. Something that I've mentioned on the show before is, and it's not meant to be negative, but it's the understanding that no one's coming to save you. And I say this because so I'm living in a part of the United States it's fairly Christian, fairly religious. And I remember early on in my business praying, like, God, just bring me a customer, please. Like, bring me something. And I remember I had a friend of mine who was like, hey, God's not going to bring you a customer. No disrespect to my faith. It was just like, there has to be like, you have to get up and go and do something and like go out and get those customers. And I resonate with your comment on being ultra decisive, because I think this is true for our business, is that a lot of times we get paralyzed in what's the right decision, or I'm going to wait and see. And I think there's something to be said about embracing the risk and making the decision, knowing full and well, this may be the wrong decision, but I'm going to move so that I I don't freeze or I don't die or what have you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And the other thing in those times that we've done a lot of that has really, really helped is just over communicate. And maybe the last one that has helped with imposter syndrome and dips and troughs in my entrepreneurial journey is I joined an entrepreneurs organization back in 2003, and having a peer group, whether it's through your church, whether it's through your industry, whether it's through entrepreneurs organization. So entrepreneurs organization have $1 million criteria, but they also have an accelerator program, which is for smaller businesses that are going to get there. And then YPO also, those peer groups. So when I was dealing with a difficult time, I could present the challenge to other entrepreneurs, and then leveraging the concept called Gestalt, which is both prevalent in YPO and EO, whereas you share from experience and you don't give advice. They would share their experience on how they dealt with similar situations. So now I've got this peer group that are not trying to sell me anything, and they're not a customer. They're just there to support and help me. And I think for any entrepreneur, if you can find a peer group of similar, like-minded people, that has been a massive support for me. I personally feel like I owe Entrepreneurs Organization and YPO for the amazing value that it's added in my life.
Well, I love that. And we've had people on the show before who've been part of EO. For our listeners, Craig Wasselchuk, who's been on. But definitely for you guys listening who we talked about, like finding a business partner or other people to talk to. If you were listening to that and thinking, well, it's just me, I'm a solo entrepreneur. Orrin, I think your advice on finding a peer group is great advice. And I think it's great advice also because a lot of times when we're starting out or we're small or this thing is, we're trying to grow this thing, we have like the social media effect of like, I have to present the business as being like amazing, everything's great. I remember this person who posted on social media for months about how amazing her business was. And then she became a customer of mine and she had not made $1 in 18 months. And I remember thinking like, why did you post all of this when clearly you were struggling? Which, there is a balance to that. I don't think like you bear every detail on social media regardless, but I think finding groups important. And for our local listeners, if you're in Northwest Arkansas, don't forget we do have our growth group at 9 a.m. every Tuesday morning. It is that peer group with a very much no selling culture. People come, they do share their experiences. And so if you're listening, you're from our NWA area, definitely check out that group 9 a.m. on Tuesdays at Red Kite in Taneytown. And you can email me more if you want more information about it. But Orrin, we're getting towards the end of this episode, and I still want to ask you about your management perspective. When I think about the podcast, the things that kind of always come to the top is we talk a lot about sales, customer relationships, and then frankly, management is the other thing that really pops up as one of the most commonly talked about topics. I know you're really passionate about leadership. You're passionate about culture. I'd love to get your perspective on how you manage people well. What's been kind of your perspective on all of that? Share a little bit of that with us, please.
Sure. We realized, I think it was in 2004, that so many of the people that come into the IT industry, this is actually their passion and their hobby. So if we were truly going to build something significant, we needed a culture that deeply encouraged some level of balance. Because these, when you look at the nature of IT and some of the peaks of demand and the troughs and managing that capacity is people can burn out quite easily. We actually had one of our team burn out in 2004. So where I've arrived at in my entrepreneurial career is I don't know how I could build a successful business if I didn't place our people and our culture front and center.
Yeah.
So how do we try to do this? Our purpose is supporting the dreams of the doers. So on the people side, that is about a culture and creating a safe space for people to pursue what they really want in their lives. And sometimes it's resulted in people resigning and moving on. And then on the customer side, it's taking our knowledge and understanding of their business and aligning that with the technology, services, and recommendations so that we can have a real impact on their business and support their goals and dreams. So from a culture, what we call our dreams program, the way we've programmatized that is we have just over 300 people, and we have each year you do your dream book. So we've got a process we go through, which is basically your top 10 personal goals and dreams visualized. Mm-hmm. This is a PowerPoint deck, to keep it simple, of images, So, there's an image of me with my daughter, and the thing I put in there is your patience is your power. And I know that that's something I've struggled with as a father. So that's a typical example. So we do that each year. You get put into a dream group, and there is a dream coach that will lead your group. It's one of your group, and they get trained. Okay. You meet once a month, and you share how you're doing. You learn from each other. You support each other. And we also do something called a Dreams Week in Advance, which on a Monday before 12 o'clock means capture the top 3 to 5 things you want to get done in that week, no matter how crazy it gets. Yeah. So, it's like if you go to Glassdoor on Netsurit, okay, and you go and look at some of the reviews, some of them say, this company's not great. They said the Dreams program was optional. It's more like a cult. They just force you to do it, things like this. But it's like, this is our purpose.
Yeah.
This is so when I'm interviewing people, I always say to them, look, if this doesn't resonate with you, you're going to miss one of the most powerful parts of spending time working this way. Then rather not choose not. So it's quite difficult to say, like, is culture optional or not? It's its own debate. But that's really our sort of my perspective on it.
I love it because I just appreciate how you have a philosophy of thinking about the whole person. Because I think so many, and especially you guys who are listening, who maybe your entrepreneurial venture is a side hustle and you're still like in that 9 to 5, maybe corporate structure. I think you guys can really resonate with this, how many businesses are so interested in the one thing you bring to the business, your job, that they are disinterested in the rest of the person. The things that they care about, the struggles that they have. I think about businesses that actively suppress side hustles and entrepreneurial interest of their employees. So I think it's great that you guys obviously have a passion for the whole person. And just for our listeners, studies have shown that when you care for the whole person, that it lifts that person in terms of the performance that they have. And so if you're thinking about your people making you more money, you might think about, how can I care for that whole person and not just for that singular part of them? So, Orrin, this has been an amazing episode. Man, I need to have you back. There were so many great things. I wanted to dive a little bit more into your backstory. I read here this note about you having gone to 9 schools as a kid and getting kicked out of 3. And then it says 6 out of 9, not bad. So we'll have to, that'll be the little teaser for the next time, if you're willing to rejoin us for another episode. Orrin, what's the best way for people who would love to hire you and work with you, or maybe there's someone listening who's thinking, I wonder if I could get a job with this company. Talk about both those groups, please, if you can.
For sure. If you want to get hold of me, whether it's work with us or potentially, hire us for your business. So there, I would say 3 different ways. One is LinkedIn. So you can find me, Orrin Klopper, on LinkedIn, ORRIN, and then Klopper, KLOPPER. You can email me, orrin@netsurit.com. And you can also just you can text me directly or call me on my mobile, which is 917-517-7763. I'm very responsive. If I don't reply, message me again, because there'll be a reason why I didn't.
Yeah. Orrin, so generous of you to make the time to come on the show today. You gave some amazing advice. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Blake. I'm very grateful.
Hey, for our listeners, I'm going to put those details, except for the phone number. It's not going to be in the actual description, but I'll have everything else that's going to be in that description of the episode. If you enjoyed today's episode and this is your first episode to listen to, what the heck are you waiting on? Click that subscribe button so you can keep getting good advice wherever you are in your business. Don't forget, if you're a business owner and you want to advertise on the podcast, you can email me at blake@goodadvicecoaching.com. Maybe you want to be a guest on the show. Definitely reach out to me and let me know. Or if you're listening and you want to support the podcast, you can also go to our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/goodadvice. And of course, we appreciate all of our supporters of the show. That's today's good advice. We'll catch you later. See ya.